The geometry taught in schools is founded on a misconception. Now, gentlemen, I don't expect you to accept anything without reasonable ground for it. But if you take a cube, having only length, breadth, and thickness, it can have no real existence. It is a mathematical abstraction. Any real body must have extension in 4 dimensions. It must have length, breadth, thickness, and duration. Time. Well, this is clear even under the exercise of that most uncommon quality, common sense. Perceptions of space are in constant flux, but there is no difference between time and any of the other 3 dimensions except our consciousness moves along time. And as with the air we breathe, we are so inured to the element, we only perceive it in rare instances of disruption. Scientific people know that time is only a kind of space. For some years I have been investigating the geometry of 4 dimensions. Long ago I had the inkling of a machine. And 3 years ago I began work. Work on a machine that shall travel through space and time. Gentlemen, the time machine. This model is a union of science and art, a transport of delight to bridge the chasm between ourselves, primordial ooze, and the extremity of enduring light. There are 2 controls upon the time machine, and these rods project the engine and the passenger into the past or the future, invisible to the unaided eye as are the spokes of a spinning wheel or a bullet in flight. You don't believe me? Gentlemen, I need your belief. I need your good and accurate report. For with the full-size realization of this model, it is my intention. It is my intention now to explore time. I intend to create history, traverse history, behold and understand as it was in the beginning, is now, and forever shall be. Now, I do not know if the past or the future beckons, but if all is nicely judged, I shall return within minutes, and you shall surely believe. Now, outside stands my carriage. My laboratory is 10 minutes from this hall. I intend to return to my time machine. I intend to make this time voyage. And if my calculations are correct, my future time travel self is even now proceeding to report to you directly in this place. Gentlemen, ladies, this is it. I cannot argue. I can tell a story, but I cannot argue. Must refrain from interruption. It will sound like lies, but every word is true. For the past 8 days I have been traveling in time. For you, how long? Minutes. I took the starting lever in one hand. Suppose a suicide who holds a pistol to his skull feels much the same. I gripped the starting lever, pushed the lever. A nightmare sensation of falling, nausea, sickening uncertainty. My workshop was unchanged. Had anything happened? And then I noted the clock. 8 hours had elapsed. I thrust the lever to its extremity, and day came like the powering of an electric globe, and night gushed in. The laboratory sat in dim twilight, faint, now growing fainter. Tomorrow night came, and then day night, faster and faster still. I cannot convey the peculiar sensation of time travel. It's headlong, horrible anticipation. Night followed day like the flapping of a great wing, mesmeric, frightful, awesome. I saw the sun leap the sky, the moon spin her quarters in a smear of circling stars. The laboratory had fallen away, destroyed, I suppose, and I was out in open air, a dim impression of scaffolding, but already too fast to be conscious of moving things. The slowest snail that ever crawled dashed too fast for me. The sky took a wonderful deepness of blue, like early twilight. Sun became a blazing arch in space, the moon a fainter band, and nothing of the stars, save every now and then a brighter circle flickering in the blue. The land grows misty and vague. Trees grow and change like puffs of vapor, now brown, now green, they spread, shiver and pass. Huge buildings rise and pass like dreams, and I howl into the future, headlong, mindless, rushing. Fresh thoughts came into my mind. Curiosity and dread. What strange developments might have appeared as I came into this world, racing and fluctuating before my eyes. I saw great architecture, more massive than any of our time, but I saw it built of glimmer and mist. I saw rich green flood the hillside and remain. The earth seemed fair. And my mind came to the perilous business of stopping. With a craven gust of petulance, I foolishly hugged the levers. Incontinently my machine reeled, and I was flung headlong, blasted, blinded. Utterly lost. Thunder bubbled in my ears, and pitiless hail stung me. I lay sprawled on soft turf before the overset machine. Slowly my senses coalesced. I was on a little garden lawn, soaked and surrounded by rhododendron bushes. I surveyed the future through a curtain of hail. A colossal white figure loomed beyond the rhododendrons. And as the hail thinned, I saw the figure more clearly. It was very large. A substantial tree touched its shoulder, and of white marble. Something like a winged sphinx. Its vast pedestal seemed of bronze, thick with verdigris. Sightless eyes watched, and the shadow of a smile stood on its lips. Time and weather lent an unpleasant suggestion of disease. I tore my eyes away, the hail curtain ran threadbare, and the audacity of my voyage crashed on me. What cruelty might not have happened to me? What if the race had developed into something inhuman, unsympathetic, irresistible? I might seem like some old world brute, the more dreadful and disgusting for a common likeness, a foul thing to exterminate without thought. I saw other vast shapes, intricate buildings, a wooded hillside creeping through the ragged storm. I was seized with the panic and lurched to the overturned machine, striving frantically to set it right. Shafts of sun pierced the thunderstorm. The grey was swept aside, the sky became an intense blue, and I felt naked in a strange and terrible world. The machine gave under my desperation and turned over. Slowly my courage recovered. I began to look more curiously at this unborn world. I noticed how thick and warm was the air, like a great and fecund greenhouse. I took my hands from the machine. In a circular opening, high in a wall, I saw figures in soft, rich robes. They had seen me. I heard voices, and running through the bushes by the Sphinx came the heads and shoulders of men. He was a slight creature, perhaps 4 foot high, and a purple tunic with a leather-like belt. Sandals wrapped feet, legs and head were bare. Very beautiful, very graceful, but indescribably frail, like a beautiful consumptive. He came to me, laughed in my eyes, and did you follow me? He spoke in a strange, sweet, liquid tongue. Others came. Presently, perhaps, there were 8 of these exquisite creatures about me. One addressed me. I shook my head. He touched my hand. I felt other soft little limbs on my back and shoulders. They wanted to make sure I was real. And this was not alone. Indeed, there was something about these pretty people that inspired confidence, a graceful gentleness, a childlike ease. Now to think of it, I say these pretty people were men. I say he was slight, he came to me, he touched my hand, but there was nothing to distinguish male from female. Nothing. I made a motion of caution as curious pink hands caressed the time machine, and for security I unscrewed the levers and pocketed them. Looking more nearly at the porcelain waveset, I saw hair uniformly curly and neat with no suggestion of a long face. Their ears were minute, and their mouths small with bright red, rather thin lips. And their liquid eyes were large, mild, simple, passive. They simply stood about, smiling and cooing soft notes to each other. I pointed to the time machine, and then to myself, and then to the sun as to suggest time. A quaint figure in checkered purple and white astonished me by following my gestures and imitating the sound of thunder. I was staggered. I'd always believed the people of the remote future would be greatly before us in knowledge, art, everything. Was I have one ask a question on the level of a 5-year-old? To ask if I had come from the sun in a thunderstorm? Disappointment flooded my mind. But I nodded. Pointed to the sun and gave such a vivid rendering of the thunderclap as to startle them. They stepped back a pace. Then came one running with a chain of beautiful flowers, all unknown to me, and placed it about my neck. The idea was received with melodious applause, and they were soon all running for flowers and flinging them at me until I was almost smothered in the beautiful flowers that countless years of culture had created. The world had become a wild tangle of beautiful bush and flower, a long neglected yet weedless garden. Well, someone must have suggested that the plaything be exhibited in the nearest building, and I was led past the white Sphinx to a vast grey edifice of fretted stone. My anticipation of grave and intellectual posterity came, with irresistible merriment in my mind. The time machine was left deserted on the turf, among the rhododendrons. The huge doorway to that ravaged edifice was richly carved. I fancied suggestions of old Phoenician decoration, but badly broken and worn. Bright crowds met me in the doorway, and we entered an eddying mass of bright robes, white limbs, a whirl of laughter and laughing speech. The giant doorway opened into a proportionately great hall. The roof was in shadow, and the partially glazed windows allowed a tempered light. The floor was of huge blocks of hard white metal, so worn by the generations as to be deeply channeled on busy ways. There were low tables of polished stone scattered about the hall, heaped with fruits. Some I recognized as a kind of hypertrophied raspberry and orange, but for the most part they were strange. There were cushions scattered between the tables, and the elfin throng sat, signed for me to do likewise, and without ceremony began eating, flicking stalk and peel into round openings in the sides of the table. Famished, I fell to the food with a will, and examined the hall at leisure. The general effect was rich and picturesque, but dilapidated. The geometrical patterns in the stained glass windows were broken in many places, and the marble table near me was fractured. There were perhaps a couple of hundred in the hall watching me, all dressed in the same soft, strong, silky material, and fruit was all their diet. These people of the remote future were strict vegetarians. I found later that horses, cattle, sheep, dogs, and much more had followed the ichthyosaurs into extinction. But the fruits were delightful. Appetite checked, I determined to attempt the speech of these future men. My first forays into the music of their language created much amusement. It was slow work and they tired easily, and I resolved, out of necessity, to allow them to teach in small doses when inclined. Very small doses I found them to be. I never met people more indolent, so easily fatigued, so lacking in interest. Eager they would come, but like children they would wander away. Well, dinner and conversational beginnings ended, I noted that all those who had surrounded me at first were gone. Unhindered, I walked through the giant portal, meeting more of these future men who would follow, laugh, chatter, and leave me to my own devices. Calm evening held the wood, and I resolved to mount a crest, perhaps a mile off, to get a wider view of our planet. Year 802,701 AD. Now that, I should explain, was the date the dials of my machine recorded. As I walked, I watched for every impression that would explain the ruined splendor of this world, for ruinous it was. Up the hill, for instance, was a huge heap of granite bound together by masses of aluminium, a vast labyrinth of walls and crumpled heaps, sprouting thick mounds of beautiful pagoda-like plants. It was in the derelict remains of this vast and mysterious structure I was to have a very strange experience. My first intimation of the discovery even more strange. Of that I will speak in its proper place. There were no small houses. Apparently the household, possibly the house had vanished. Palace-like structures had supplanted the house, the cottage, the terrace. Communism, I said to myself. And on the heels of that came another thought. In costume, in all differences of texture and bearing that marked the sexes from each other, these people of the remote future were alike. And the children seemed but precocious miniatures of their parents. seeing the ease and security in which humanity lived, close resemblance of the sexes is not unexpected. Strength in man, softness in woman, the family, differentiation in occupations are only needed in an age of physical force. With population balanced and abundant, much childbearing is no blessing. Where violence comes rarely and children are secure, there is no need of an efficient family. We see the beginnings of this in our time. In the future, it was complete. While musing, my eye was caught by a pretty structure, like a well under a little domed roof, a cupola. I thought of the oddness of the wells still existing. There were no buildings towards the top of the hill, and as my walking powers were evidently miraculous, I was alone for the first time, and I pushed the crest. It was as sweet a view as I have ever seen. The sun had dipped below the horizon, the west was flaming gold touched with purple and crimson. Here or there a white or silvery figure in the waste garden of the earth. Here or there an obelisk or cupola. There were no hedges, no signs of proprietary rights, no evidence of agriculture. The whole world had become a garden. I soon realized the odd consequence of the social effort in which we are engaged. Strength is the outcome of need. Security sets a premium on feebleness. Improving conditions of life had reached a climax. One triumph of united humanity over nature followed another. Dreams became projects in hand and carried forward. I saw the harvest. The air had been purged of filth, the earth of weeds. Everywhere were fruits and sweet, delightful flowers. Disease, social and economic struggle had been eradicated. I thought of the physical slightness of these people, their lack of intelligence, those vast, abundant ruins, and it strengthened my belief in a perfect conquest of nature. After battle comes the quiet. Strong, energetic, intelligent, humanity had used the last of its vitality to alter its conditions. Now came reaction to altered conditions. Where there is no danger, those we call weak are no longer weak. Better equipped are they than the strong, fretted by an energy with no outlet. Perhaps those beautiful buildings were the last surgings of a redundant human energy. Energy and security takes to art and eroticism. Then comes languor and decay. We keep keen on the grindstone of pain and necessity. It seemed that here was that hateful grindstone broken at last. Oh, in the gathering dark, I thought I held the secret to these delicious people. A simple explanation and plausible. As most wrong theories are. By an overflow of moonlight, I could see the little people had ceased to move below. An owl flitted by. I shivered with the night chill and determined to descend and find a place to sleep. My eye travelled to the white sphinx. The time machine was gone. Like a lash came the loss of my own aid. I ran with all my might, anguish and dread. At the lawn I cried aloud. No one answered, no creature stirred. I felt faint, cold, desperate. The Sphinx seemed to tower above me, smile and mock my dismay. I crashed in bushes and moonlight around the Sphinx, beating the bushes until my knuckles were raw and aching. Sobbing and raving, I reeled into the great hall. Dark, silent, deserted. I struck a match and found a second hole where perhaps a score of little people slept. There! Where is my time machine? I bawled like an angry child, grabbing and shaking them. Some laughed, most were terrified. It came to my mind I was doing as foolish a thing as was possible for me to do. I blundered out hearing moonlight cries of terror, little stumbling feet. The night search and despair grew pale. I fell by the Sphinx, weeping with wretchedness. And then I slept or swooned away. I sat in the freshness of the morning. Things came clear to my mind. The wild folly of my frenzy. Slowly I could reason with myself, be calm, be patient. The time machine has been taken, follow, you find it. Retrieve it by force or cunning. I had exhausted my emotions. I wasted time in futile questionings that little people did not understand. Some thought it a jest and laughed at me. It was the hardest task to keep from wringing those pale, graceful necks. But the turf gave better counsel. I found the groove ripped between the pedestal of the Sphinx and the marks I had made with my feet when I struggled with the overturned machine. There were other signs of removal, queer, narrow footprints, such as I imagined would be made by a sloth. This directed my attention to the pedestal. Not a mere block, but highly decorated with deep framed panels on each side. I rapped. It was hollow. I could find no keyholes or handles, but possibly the door was opened from within. My time machine was inside. How it got there was another problem. I saw little people coming. I smiled, I beckoned to them, I pointed to the pedestal and intimated my desire to open it. I do not know how to convey their expression. It was as if I'd offered the last possible insult. I tried another little chap in white with the same result. His manner made me ashamed, but I wanted my machine. I tried him more. He broke off, my temper flew. I was after him, I grabbed him, I dragged him to the Sphinx. With such a look of horror and repugnance on his face, I let him go. I picked up a rock and hammered, flattening and coiling it erect. I banged on the panels. I thought I heard a sound like a chuckle. I began walking. Patience, said I. If you want your machine, you must leave that Sphinx alone. If they mean to keep it, it will do little good wrecking their bronze panels. If they do not, you will get it back as soon as you ask for it. Face this world. Watch. Learn its ways. Be careful of hasty guesses at meaning. In the end, you will find clues. Years of study and toil to reach the future came to my mind, along with my new passion to get out of it. I had made the most complicated and hopeless trap ever man devised. I could not help it. I laughed aloud. Other little people avoided me. I did my best to show no concern and to abstain from pursuit of them. Soon, things got back to the old footing. I made what progress I could in language, pushed my inspirations here and there. The speech was excessively simple sentences, usually of 2 words, but I failed to master any but the simplest utterances. I resolved to put the mystery of the bronze doors and the time machine into a corner of memory, till growing knowledge led me back to them. From every hill I could see splendid buildings, endlessly varied in material and style, blossom-laden trees, tree ferns, and here and there water shone like silver, and those circular wells, some of great depth, stood out rimmed in bronze and protected from the rain by a little cupola. In the shafted darkness I could see no water, but heard a sound like the beating of some engine, and discovered from the flaring of my matches a steady current of air down the shaft. I threw a piece of paper into the throat of it, and instead of fluttering down, it sucked me from sight. I became sensible to much unseen. There were no signs of crematoria, nothing suggestive of tombs of aged and infirm among these people, there were none. The palaces I explored were living places, great dining halls, sleeping apartments. I could find no appliances, no machinery. The little people displayed no creative tendencies. There were no shops, no workshops, no signs of importation. They spent their time playing, bathing in the river, making love in a half-playful fashion, eating fruit and sleeping. I could not see how things kept going. Yet something had taken my time machine into the pedestal of the Sphinx. Why? I could not imagine. I lacked a clue. On the third day, I made a friend. I was watching the little people bathe in a shallow when I saw one seized with cramp and began drifting. The current was swift, but not too strong for even a moderate swimmer. It will give an idea of the strange deficiency of these people when I say not one made the slightest effort to rescue the poor, weak thing drowning before their eyes. I waded in and caught the poor mite and drew it safe. Massage of the limbs brought around. I expected no gratitude. But I was wrong. In the afternoon, returning from an exploration, this woman, I believe it to be, received me with cries of delight and presented me with a huge garland of flowers, evidently made for me alone. I'd been desperate, but I did my best to show appreciation of the gift. We were soon seated in a little stone arbor in conversation. Conversation chiefly of smiles. The creature's friendliness affected me. Moved me, as might a child. As we passed each other flowers, she kissed my hands. I did the same to hers. Her name will be Mina. She was indeed like a child and wanted to be with me always and follow me everywhere. On my next exploration, it went to my heart to leave her tired, exhausted, and calling out. But the problems of the world had to be mastered. I had not, I said, come to the future to carry on a miniature flirtation. I had as much trouble as comfort from her devotion. She was somehow a great comfort. Not until it was too late did I understand what she meant to me. I would look for her little figure of white and gold as I came over the hill. And from her, I learned that fear had not left the world. She was fearless in daylight. Had the oddest confidence in me, but dreaded the dark, dreaded shadows, dreaded black things. But darkness was dreadful. It was a passionate emotion that set me thinking and observing. The little people slept in droves. After dark, I never found one outsider sleeping alone within. But for 5 nights, Mina slept with her head on my shoulder. The morning before her rescue, at dawn, I woke with a start and a fancy some grey animal had rushed from the chamber. It was that unholy hour when things are just creeping out of the blackness, where everything is clear-cut, colourless yet unreal. I walked through the great hall out into the flagstones before the palace. The dying moonlight and the first pallor of dawn mingled in a ghastly half-light. The ground was sombre grey, bushes, inky black, sky void of colour or cheer. I could see ghosts. Several times up the hill I saw white figures, and twice I fancied a solitary ape-like figure among the ruins, and then a leash of them carrying something dark. They moved hastily and seemed to vanish among the bushes. I doubted my eyes. sky lightened. I saw no more white figures. But I thought of them until Mina's rescue drove them from my mind. Mina was a pleasant distraction. On my fourth morning, I sought shelter from the heat and glare among the colossal ruins by the Sphinx. Clambering over masonry, I found a narrow gallery, end and side windows blocked by fallen stone. It seemed impenetrably dark, and I entered, groping a great amoeba of colour before my eyes, and suddenly I was transfixed. A pair of eyes illuminated against the daylight without watched me from the darkness. The dread of beasts came on me, and then the absolute security in which humanity appeared to live. Instead, I speak. Hello? I extend my hand, and I touch something soft. Something white slithers by, a queer little ape-like figure. It slips, staggers, and is swallowed in shadow. I follow and find a well opening, half closed by a fallen pillar. Matchlight eddies. Lapping on a stunted travesty of man, climbing down a trail of metal holes. Man had not remained one. Man had differentiated into two animals. My graceful children of the upper world were not the sole descendants of the age. That bleached, obscene, nocturnal thing was also heir to all ages. What was that nightmare lemur doing in my dream of perfect organization? What was found at the foot of the shaft? I told myself I had nothing to fear. I should descend for the solution of my difficulties. I hesitated. The second species of man was subterranean. The earth below my feet must be tunneled enormously to accommodate the new race. The wells and ventilating shafts showed how universal were its ramifications. It was in an artificial underworld that work was being done. The widening difference between capitalist and labourer was the key to everything. Industry had lost its birthright in the sky and had gone deeper and deeper. And now the planet teems with wretches cut from the wholesome natural world. The rich find the wretches repugnant, damn them and luxuriate. The haves pursue pleasure, comfort and beauty above ground, while labouring lowlife is engineered to shift with the worlds. They would no doubt pay rent, and if they refuse, would be starved or suffocated for arrears. Such as were rebellious would die, and in the end, the survivors would be as well adapted to their appalling conditions as the upper world people were to theirs. I found later the benighted brutes were called Morlocks. Beautiful wraiths, Eloi. Great triumph of humanity, not simply a triumph over nature, but a terrible triumph over its fellow man. Why had the Morlocks taken my time machine? Why, if the Eloi were masters, could they not restore it to me? Why were they so afraid of the dark? For 2 days I prevaricated, such was my shrinking from these cold, half-bleached subterraneans, but I knew I shirked an inevitable duty. I returned to the caresses of Nina, and from that shallow comfort resolved to descend without delay. Mina ran with me, but when she saw me lean over the well, became utterly disconcerted. With a piteous cry, she began to pull at me. I saw her agonized face over the parapet, and I smiled to reassure her. Down a shaft, perhaps 200 yards, clinging to bars fit for a creature much smaller and lighter than myself. I lurch into the abyss and I swing by one hand and I dare not rest again. In an agony of discomfort, I edge down and thudding machinery. Thudding grows louder and more oppressive. Lastly, a slender loophole, a narrow tunnel in which I can rest. In which I can tremble. Unbroken darkness has a distressing effect upon my eyes. The air fills with the humming throb and pump of machinery. I don't know how long I lay before a soft, dead hand, before an unspeakable caress. Slumped in the bowels of the future earth, I was roused by a soft hand touching my face. I started up, and striking a match, I saw 3 pallid abominations flee before the light, their gross eyes swimming into dark gutters and tunnels. Feeling my way, walls fall away. Another match. I see a vast arched cavern stretched to utter darkness. Huge mechanical shapes rise in the oppressive dimness, and in grotesque shadows, spectral Morlocks shelter from the alien in their ghastly world. Faint, foul odour of fresh shed blood is in the air. Morlocks are carnivorous. And probably I see a table seemingly set for a meal. Raw meat stands in a substantial joint. There is vein-like purple luminescence in that place, very indistinct. Great unmeaning shapes, grotesque figures waiting for darkness to come at me again. The match nips my fingers and falls. 4 matches remain. Dark, paralyzing terror. The dank hand touches mine. Lank fingers across my face. A foul odor enfolds me. Breathing. Soft fingers striving to gently disengage mine from the matches. Hands pluck at clothing. Unseen creatures examine me. They clutch more boldly. They whisper foul secrets. I shiver. I shout back! They flinch. They make queer, ungodly laughter. I strike another match. What? Leaping out the flicker with a scrap of paper from my pocket, I retreat into the narrow tunnel. Instantly, my light is gone. I hear Morlocks slithering toward me, like wind among the leaves, pattering like rain. Hands try to hold me back. Another match. You cannot imagine how nauseatingly inhuman they look, the pale, chinless faces, great, lidless, pink-grey eyes. I do not stop to look. The third match was almost done when I reached the shaft. The great pump crashed below. I reached for the climbing bars as my feet were grasped from behind. I was violently lugged backwards and dropped my last match. But I had my hand on the climbing bars. I lashed my feet at the clutching Morlocks and scrambled up the shaft, while my revolting pursuers peered and blinked and made vile sounds. The climb seemed interminable. My head swam, nausea gripped me. I could not keep my hold, and I felt every sensation of falling. I tipped over the well mouth, staggered into the blinding sunlight, and I fell. I remember Mina kissing my hands and my ears, the voices of other Eli, and then I was insensible. Difficult to tell the coming night's lightning. Each night there was more darkness. Soon the moon would pass her last quarter. I wondered what foul villainy the Morlocks were equal to. Now, the Eloi might have been the favourite aristocracy and the Morlocks their slaves, but that had long passed. The Eloi had decayed to beautiful futility, and the Morlocks maintained them perhaps out of habit, but the old order had been in part reversed. Man had trust his brother from ease and sunshine, and that brother was back changed. The underworld meat I had seen floated to my mind. I tried to recall the shape of it. I would at least defend myself. I needed to make arms and find a fastness where I might sleep with safety. I shuddered with horror to think how the Morlocks had already examined me. I wandered, but I found no place that commended itself as inaccessible. And then from a low hillock, I saw a structure unlike all others. It seemed to be a palace of gleaming green porcelain. I resolved to explore. I struck southwest with Mina. She ran by my side, darting off to pick flowers and put in my pockets. Distances were deceptive. Mina's fear and fatigue grew as night closed. She put her arms around my neck, my head on my shoulder. I could see nothing of the Morlocks, but it was early. I lowered Mina and sat. A great black wood stood in my path. I could no longer see the palace of green porcelain, and I doubted my direction. Exhaustion conquered fear, and I despaired to spend the night on the open hill. Mina was fast asleep. Wrapped her in my coat. Through that long night, I kept my mind off the Morlocks as best I could. At dawn, I awakened Mina, and we went down to the forest. Now, pleasant and green, we found fruit and met other Eloi, laughing and playing. I thought of the meat. These Eloi were mere fatted cattle the Morlocks preserved and preyed upon, but they had kept too much of their human form not to claim my sympathy and to make me a sharer in their degradation and fear. I could find some form of refuge and make arms. I needed lasting light and something to break down the doors of the Sphinx. If I could carry a blaze of light through those doors, I should discover the time machine and escape. Mina, I resolved to bring to our own age. We found the palace of green porcelain at noon. Deserted. Ruins. Through broken doors we found a long gallery with many side windows. It was a museum. Here, once, a fabulous paleontology section. There, perhaps, the remains of a historical gallery. Exploring, I found a gallery devoted to minerals. A block of sulfur set my mind running on gunpowder. I could find no saltpeter, no nitrate. In the much ravaged section devoted to natural history, everything had long since passed out of recognition. One massive chamber was devoted to incomprehensible, crumbling, intriguing engines and machines. Suddenly, Mina was at my side. So sudden it startled me. Intent upon the machines, I had failed to notice the gradual ebb of light towards one end of the massive chamber, until Mina's apprehension drove me to it. The gallery ran into thick blackness, but in its twilight, narrow footprints broke the carpet of dust. From some inexplicable device, I wrenched off a lever more than equal to any Morlock skull. The next gallery around my heart was piled with crumbling hoops. Useless, meaningless, in the last stages of decay. The human millennia had fallen mute. But how tragic was that, when unhuman eyes could not see and ears not hear? To tell all of that long afternoon would require an effort of memory too great, but two miraculous findings did I make. A box of matches, preserved, and camphor hermetically sealed, a good bright flame, and an excellent candle. I gouged my name on something precious and quit the palace. I was determined to reach the White Sphinx early next morning. I gathered sticks and dried grass. Presently my arms were full and our progress slowed. Mina was tired and I began to weary. It was near dark before we reached the wood. Fearful Mina would have stopped, but a sense of impending calamity, which should have warned me, drove me. I was without sleep for 36 hours. I was feverish and irritable. I felt sleep coming, and Morlocks with it. In black bushes I saw 3 gnarled figures and did not feel safe from their insidious approach. The wood was less than a mile across. If I could get to the bare hillside, there was a safer resting place. But I should have to abandon my firewood. Then it came to my mind, set the fuel ablaze and amaze our stalkers. I considered this folly so ingenious. Red tongues lit the heap of wood. A new, strange thing to Mina. She wanted to play with it, but I caught her up and plunged into the forest. The glare lit the path, and looking back, I could see the blaze spreading. Mina clung convulsively, had my iron bar, pushed on grimly. Pattering grew in my ears. I caught the queer sounds and voices I'd heard in the underworld. I tugged at my coat, my arm. Mina shivered violently and became still. I lowered Mina and fumbled in my pocket for a match. A struggle broke out in the darkness around my knees. Soft hands crept up my back, touching my neck. The match fizzed and flared, and white backs of gibbering Morlocks darted among the trees. I pulled a lump of camphor from my pocket and prepared to light as the match waned. Mina lay motionless, face down, scarce breathing. Camphor split and flared and drove back Morlocks and shadows, but the wood trembled with the stir and murmur of an infernal mob. I snatched up Mina and I ran and ran and ran with not the faintest idea of direction. In a cold sweat, I determined to build a fire and make a stand. I gathered sticks and leaves and lit more camphor, and Morlock eyes shone like carbuncles. The camphor spluttered out. I struck a match. 2 encroaching forms fled. A third, blinded, came straight toward me. Bone ground under the blow of my fist. The creature shrieked sickeningly, staggered and fell. I clawed up my bonfire and lit more camphor, and noticing the dry fuel above, began dragging down branches, stopping only when the blaze was good for an hour or more. Mina lay by my iron mace, like one dead. I flopped beside her. Morlocks were on. My hand flashed for matches and close to nothing. I had slept, the fire had died, and the bitterness of death flooded my soul. I was caught by the hair and the neck and the arms, foul, soft creatures heaped on me. I felt as if I was in a monstrous spider's web. Little teeth nipped my neck. I lashed out for my lever, struggled up, shaking human rats from me. I slashed where I felt faces to be, and felt the succulent giving of flesh and bone under my blows. For a moment I was free. I backed against a tree, swinging the bar in the air. The wood rang with agony, voices screamed to a higher pitch, but the living filth stayed out of reach. And then I stood agape, Morlocks running in a stream from behind me, away to the wood in front. Their backs no longer white, but reddish. I saw a spark and I understood the Morlocks' flight. My first fire was coming after me. I looked for Mina. I looked for Mina, but she was gone, and the night of nightmares was upon me. I howled as I ran, slashing the air with my iron. Trees exploded, hissing and cracking, closer and closer, and I followed the Morlocks. One came crazed towards me, past me, screaming in the fire. I found a score or more of the pallid abomination, berserk with fear and pain, howling into flames. I scrambled and searched for Mina, but Mina was gone. I fell on a hillock, and the nightmare danced around me. Morlocks blundered to me, and I killed them. I stood myself, I screamed away. I beat the ground, I called the God to let me wait. The fire sank lower and lower, and then came the bright white light of day. I searched for traces of Mina, but there were none. From the hillock I could now see the smoke-shrouded palace of green porcelain. Got my bearings for the white sphinx and limped across this waste of ashes with blackened stems still pulsing with internal fire to the hiding place of the time machine. Exhausted, filthy, wretched, lame, and wretched for the horrible death of Mina, dragged on utterly alone. I came to the crest where I had viewed the beautiful world on the evening of my arrival. The beautiful people played among the trees, some bathed where I had saved Mina. I grieved to think how brief the dream of human intellect had been. It had committed suicide. The rich were assured of comfort, the poor assured of work. One drifted to feeble prettiness, the other to brutish industry. The feeble failed their barbarous brothers, and so... This was how the thing shaped to me. How I give it to you. Sleep playing with me. I woke before sunset and walked down to the White Sphinx. Amazement, incredulity, and the utterly unexpected awaited. The doors to the pedestal were open, and in a small chamber on a raised place sat the time machine. In wonder, I dropped my metal bar, and suddenly neglecting, fearing loss, I felt for the neglected control levers in my pockets. So here, after all my preparations for the siege of the White Sphinx, came meek surrender. I stepped through the bronze frame, and for once, I grasped the mind of the Morlocks. The time machine had been carefully cleaned and oiled. I stood near to disbelieving laughter as the bronze panels struck shouts. I was trapped, so the Morlocks thought. Their obnoxious laughter came, and the brutes were on me. I flailed in the dark, scrambling for the saddle of the machine, fumbling with the levers. Vile hands slapped, tore, and beat, and I kicked, gouged, tore their flesh and fur to plant the levers. Oh, it was close, but clinging hands slipped from me, and I was travelling in time. I clung to the machine as it swayed and vibrated sickeningly, unheeding how I went. When I looked at the dial that records the days of flight to 10 digits, I had fled to the future and exceeded the capacity of the register. A peculiar change crept over things. I screamed into the unthinkable future, and the alternations between day and night grew slower and slower. The passage of the sun seemed to stretch through the centuries. A steady twilight brooded over the earth, broken only when the comet glared across the darkening sky. The sun ceased to set, simply rose and fell in the west, growing broader and more red. The moon had vanished and the circling stars slowed, until at last the vast, broad sun froze on the horizon. The earth had come to rest with one face to the sun. Cautiously, I began to retard my motion, slow, until the dim outlines of a desolate beach became clear. I stopped very gently and sat. To the northeast, The sky was inky black, lightly strewn with pale white stars. Overhead, the deep Indian red and starless, and to the southeast, glowing scarlet, where, cut by the horizon, lay the huge hulk of the sun. Rocks were of the heart's red. All life I could see was intense green moss on every point, facing the motionless sun. The seas stretched to the southwest, without waves, without breakers, with no wind, only a slight, oily swell rose and fell like laboured breathing. And pink under the lurid sky, a thick crust of salt held the margin where the water broke. Breathing was hard. I heard a harsh cry far up the desolate beach, and saw a thing like a huge white butterfly lurch into the sky and disappear behind hillocks. The sound of its voice was so dismal I shivered and clung to my machine. A mass of red rock rolled. A monstrous crab, large as a good table, legs jerking, claws swaying, antennae like carter's whips waving and feeling. I could see the hideous pouch of its mouth flickering and feeling as it moved. As I stared at this ghastly apparition, I felt something touch my cheek as though a fly had lighted there. It flicked to my ear and I picked at it, grasping the antenna of another monster crab. In an instant I placed a month between myself and these monsters. I cannot convey the sense of desolation that hung over the world. Awful sky, the moribund sea, deep beach crawling with foul monsters and the toxic green of the plants all contributed to an appalling effect. I travelled in great strides of 1,000 years or more, drawn to the mystery of the earth's fate and watching the life of the earth ebb away. At last the huge, dull sun occupied nearly a tenth of the heavens, and I stopped. Crabs had gone, beach save, livid green, seemed dead. Bitter cold assailed me. Sparse white flakes fell. Ice fringed the sea and masses drifted further out. Nothing moved. Only slime testified that life was not extinct. The world was silent. Utterly silent. Horror and deadly nausea gripped me. Tempted to revive myself, but giddy, sick and incapable, I saw something move. It was round, the size of a football perhaps, and tentacles trailed from it. Black against the blood-red water and hopping fitfully. Awful dread of the terrible twilight compelled me to return. And I came back. A long time insensible upon the machine, I came back. When the million dial was at 0, I slackened my speed. As my laboratory unfolded around me, I slowed. And slowed. And slowed. And I stopped like yards from my point of departure. The story I've told you is true. You don't believe it's true. I'm sorry to report you now. Going back now. Or forward. If you'll excuse me.
Thank you.